2020 Downtown begins. From St. Louis, and now, correspondent Jamie Floyd.
It's an old story that people make judgments, even discriminate against others based upon how they look. But we found some intriguing new research to suggest that most of us can and do make a determination about someone's race based solely upon the sound of their voice. According to the experts, discrimination is possible even if the people involved can't see each other. But Rosa Rice, and if you guess that she is African American, you're right.
Hold on one moment right here. I got 2 tickets to Van Gogh. Check it out. 2 tickets.
In fact, the notion that people sound black or white has been fodder for comedians for years.
2 tickets.
This is what black people sound like.
Yo, baby, right here. $200. You get to see the potato eaters.
And this is what white sound. Inquire about a room for her nephew in this boarding house. She was surprised and then troubled by the hostile woman on the other end of the line.
It was as if she was in a rush to get me off the phone because it's like, you're not going to get the place, so, you know, this conversation is irrelevant.
But why would the landlord be hostile toward a person she had never seen?
I'm quite sure she picked up that I was black from my voice.
So Rice placed another call, this one to the St. Louis Equal Housing Opportunity Council, or EHOC. Jamie McFarland took her call.
I felt that she was very sincere and that it could be a possible fair housing complaint. And I also felt that one test would prove me right or wrong.
A test in which anonymous callers like these, black and white, took to the phone.
I was calling about an apartment.
Calling the same number Rice had called that morning.
Hi, I'm looking for an apartment.
The result, EHOC says, is a clear pattern of discrimination.
What is the security deposit?
All the ones who were invited for an appointment, they were all white. The African-American testers were all told nothing was available.
What's that, 942?
In fact, what allegedly happened to Rice has been given a name. It's called linguistic profiling. The theory goes like this. We all make judgments based on voices over the telephone.
Just not a big deal. I just wanted
One of those judgments is race.
Give me a call when you receive the facts, okay?
But it becomes profiling when you then deny someone a job, an apartment, or anything else based on what race you think they are. That's not just wrong, it's illegal.
The common patterns of English acquisition for learning.
Stanford linguistics professor John Ball says even though we're loath to admit it, most Americans can and do determine race over the telephone. And he says most of the time we get it right.
You have an African word.
Ball stumbled upon what has become his life's work back in 1988 when he was looking to move himself.
I called around to several places and was told, please come by and look. But when I came by and looked in person, in about 3 or 4 instances, I was told that the place had already been rented, and I became suspicious.
So he started to experiment. Sometimes he'd call up and sound like this.
And I would call with my professional voice and say, hello. I'm calling about the apartment you have advertised in the paper.
But sometimes he'd sound like this.
When I use my African American dialect, I would say, hello, I'm calling about the apartment you have advertised in the paper.
Professor Ball says that in white communities, his black voice got less than half as many return calls as his white voice. And while the term may be new, linguistic profiling and the controversy surrounding it isn't.
All right, Mr. Robert Heitstra, would you resume the witness stand, please?
Remember this critical and divisive moment in the O.J. Simpson trial? The witness admitted that he'd never seen Simpson or anyone else on the night of the murders, but he said he'd heard voices near the scene of the crime.
The second voice that you heard sounded like the voice of a black man, is that correct?
Sustained. Sustained.
Of course not, I don't.
Wait!
When prosecutors demanded the witness be allowed to answer, Simpson's attorney, Johnny Cochran, angrily objected.
This statement about whether somebody sounds black or white is racist, and I resent it.
Isn't it racist to say that you can tell that I'm black or white based on the sound of my voice?
I don't believe it's racist to draw sociological inferences about someone's racial background based on the sound of their voice. What's racist is how you act upon that information.
When I first went to apply for the
That's precisely James Johnson's complaint.
I believe in my heart that they definitely was discriminating against you know, me for sounding black, you know, being black.
We're at 401 Joaquin.
Johnson says he repeatedly called a number listed on a for rent sign in front of this building and left messages.
Probably called it almost a dozen times, and no one ever called me back.
But Johnson says months later, when he saw the sign again, he asked his friend Mark, who he thinks sounds white, to call and leave a message.
A short and sweet message, and they called me right back.
Just like Rosa Rice, Johnson complained to an equal housing group.
The lady,
Again, testers called the landlord, and according to Johnson's attorneys, only whites were offered the apartment.
Don't fill out the form.
We wanted to test this ourselves, so we gave Professor Baugh and some of his students a tape of New Yorkers reciting a familiar nursery rhyme.
And the phrase that they recorded is, Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow.
And everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
At first, the students couldn't see the faces. You listen too and see whether you can tell the race of each speaker. We'll give you 4. Here's speaker number 1.
Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
That speaker is white. Speaker number 2.
Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, her lamb was sure to go.
That speaker is also white. Speaker number 3.
Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
That speaker is black.
3.
In fact, 90% of the time the class got black speakers right. But Professor Baugh admits it gets more complicated when you add different ethnic groups and accents into the racial audio mix. Listen to this man.
Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
Only about 1/4 of the class got this one right, Latino.
Let me just ask you very broadly whether you think that some people sound black and some people sound white.
Of course, some people sound black and some people sound white. I mean, black people have a certain way they speak. We have a certain English. I mean, we don't really speak a lot of standard English. You have some black people that do, you know, people that probably are really educated, but the average black person sounds black. You know, we just have a certain way that we talk.
That's the reason why I called the Equal Housing Authority.
Rosa Rice and James Johnson agree that what really matters is not the racial identification. It's the discrimination they say followed.
If you're gonna say, I'm gonna rent to whites only, then just put that in your ad. Don't have people wasting their time. I mean, you know, it's just not right.
Both cases ended up in court. The landlords in each case refused to speak with 2020 Downtown, but deny all of the allegations. In St. Louis, EHOC was able to reach a confidential settlement with the landlord in the Rice case. Johnson's case is expected to go to trial this spring. But Columbia Law School's Kimberly Crenshaw says the plaintiffs will need more than theory. They will need proof.
All cases of discrimination are difficult to prove. This adds another layer of difficulty because there's a deniability factor. The individual can say, I never heard the voice, I never got the message, I didn't know the person was African American.
As for James Johnson, he hopes the next time you pick up the telephone, you think twice about who you think is on the other end of the line and what you're going to do about it.
Did mommy tell you that?
I don't care if they realize that I'm black. I'm proud to be black.
Mom should know those things.
But, I mean, give me the same chance as you give everybody else because I'm just as good as the next person.
Look, and it's going to rain today. Did you know that?